My name is David Hayes, and I've been a cop in this town for 5 years. 5 years of learning rules that don't make sense, seeing things that shouldn't exist, and watching people disappear into places they can never come back from. I grew up here, on my dad's cattle ranch just outside of town, thinking I knew everything about this place. I was wrong. This town has secrets buried so deep that even the people who've lived here their whole lives don't know half of them. I've seen fog that hunts people, phones that call from the dead, tape that marks the doomed, and versions of myself that shouldn't exist. I've arrested the same person twice and watched both of them claim they're real. I've opened my locker to find my own death waiting inside. And I've learned that in this town, the most dangerous thing you can do is ignore the warnings. Because once you break the rules, once you cross those invisible lines, you don't just disappear. You become something else. Something that's still walking around, still talking, still pretending to be alive. But you're not. Not really. And that's what I am now. A ghost in a uniform. A cop investigating his own erasure. Still here, but not really here at all. Rule 1. Don't follow the fog into Miller's Woods. I've been a cop in this town for 5 years, and I've learned to trust my gut. But there's one thing that still makes my stomach turn every time I see it. The fog. Not normal fog. This one moves on its own, rolling through town like it has somewhere to be. And it always heads the same direction, straight into Miller's Woods. Last month, a hiker followed it in. We found his campsite 3 days later. His tent, his gear, everything, except him. But here's the strangest part. When we called his emergency contact, his sister said she didn't have a brother. Never did. I'm David, by the way. Still the rookie around here, even after 5 years on the force. I grew up on my dad's cattle ranch just outside of town, so I've seen my share of strange weather. Early morning mists that cling to the fields, storms that roll in from nowhere. But this fog, it's different. It doesn't behave like weather should. The first time I saw it, I was on patrol with Joey. We were driving down Main Street when this thick gray wall just appeared at the end of the road. It wasn't creeping in slowly like normal fog does. It was already there, fully formed, like someone had dropped a curtain across the street. Joey slowed the car down. Didn't say anything at first, just watched it through the windshield. The fog was dense, almost solid looking, and it moved, not with the wind, against it. I could see it rolling forward, slow and deliberate, like it knew exactly where it was going. "What the hell is that?" I asked. Joey put the car in park. "The fog. Comes once a month, sometimes more if it's hungry." I thought he was messing with me. Joey likes his jokes, likes to test the new guys. But his face was serious, dead serious. "Hungry?" I said. He nodded toward the fog. "Watch." I did. And that's when I saw them. Shapes, moving inside the fog. Human shapes, walking. Some of them looked like they were strolling casually, like they were out for an evening walk. Others moved faster, almost jogging, but they all headed the same direction, toward the edge of town, toward Miller's Woods. "Are those people?" I asked. Joey shook his head. "Used to be." The fog rolled past us, not touching the car, but close enough that I could see details. The shapes weren't solid. They flickered, like old film projections. Some of them wore clothes I recognized, modern jackets, jeans, sneakers. Others wore things I'd only seen in old photographs, dresses from the 50s, suits from even earlier. One of them turned its head toward me. I couldn't see a face, just a dark, empty space where a face should have been, but I felt it looking at me, felt it see me. Joey hit the gas before I could say anything else. We drove back to the station in silence. That was 3 years ago. Since then, I've seen the fog maybe a dozen times, and every time, it follows the same path. Starts at the east side of town, rolls through Main Street, past the old church, past the grocery store, past the post office. Then it heads north, toward the woods. Miller's Woods has been here longer than the town. Thick, old-growth forest that stretches for miles. Most of it's undeveloped. No trails, no campgrounds, just trees and silence. People don't go in there much. Not because it's dangerous in the normal way. No bears, no cliffs, nothing like that. They don't go in because of the stories. The fog always stops at the tree line. It doesn't go past it. It just sits there, waiting. And if you watch long enough, you'll see people walk into it, disappear into the trees, and they don't come back out. The hiker I mentioned, his name was David Crane, 26 years old, from out of state. He was passing through on a cross-country camping trip, set up his tent at the public campground just outside the woods. That was a mistake right there, camping that close to Miller's Woods. But he didn't know. He wasn't from here. We got the call on a Tuesday morning. Campground manager said someone had left their stuff behind for 3 days. Usually that's not a big deal. People forget things. But the tent was still pitched. The sleeping bag was still rolled out. His backpack was there, wallet inside, phone still charged. Joey and I drove out to check it. The campsite was clean. No signs of a struggle. No animal tracks. No blood. It looked like he'd just stepped away for a minute and never came back. I found his journal inside the tent. Last entry was dated 4 days earlier. He wrote about seeing fog rolling in at sunset. Said it was beautiful. Said he wanted to follow it, see where it went. There was a sketch in the margin, rough, quick pencil lines. He'd drawn the shapes, the figures walking inside the fog. We searched the area, called in volunteers, spent 2 days combing through the woods near his campsite. We found nothing, no trace of him. It was like he'd evaporated. That's when I called his emergency contact. The number was in his phone, saved under Sis. A woman answered. I explained the situation, told her we were looking for her brother, David Crane. There was a long pause. I don't have a brother, she said. I thought I'd dialed the wrong number. I checked the screen, read the name back to her. She confirmed it was her number, her name. But she insisted. She didn't have a brother, never had. I pushed a little, asked if maybe she had a half-brother, a step-brother, someone she'd lost touch with. She got annoyed, told me she was an only child, always had been. Then she hung up. I pulled his records after that, or tried to. There was a driver's license, a credit card, a phone bill, but no birth certificate, no school records, no social media accounts. It was like he'd appeared out of nowhere just a few years ago, built a paper-thin life, and then vanished just as quickly. Joey said it's always like that. The people the fog takes, they get erased, not just from the world, but from memory. Families forget them. Friends forget them. Records disappear. Photos fade until the faces are unrecognizable. I didn't believe him at first. I thought maybe it was just bad record keeping, people falling through the cracks. But then I found the box. It's in the evidence room, tucked in the back corner behind a filing cabinet. An old cardboard box, taped shut, covered in dust. Someone had written Miller's Woods on the side in faded marker. Inside were photos, dozens of them, Polaroids mostly. Old ones, the kind that yellow with age. Each one showed a person, a face, a name written on the back. I didn't recognize any of them, not a single one. But the dates on the photos went back decades, 50s, 60s, 70s, all the way up to last year. And every single one had the same note on the back. Last seen near Miller's Woods. I showed the box to Joey. He barely glanced at it. Those are the ones we remember, he said. The ones who didn't get fully erased. Don't know why. Maybe the fog didn't finish the job. Maybe someone fought it. But they're the lucky ones. At least we know they existed. I keep that box now. I've added David Crane's photo to it. Found an old picture from his wallet, wrote his name on the back, tucked it inside. It felt important, like I was preserving something that shouldn't be lost. But every time I look at those photos, I wonder, how many others are there? How many people walked into that fog and disappeared so completely that no one even knows to look for them? The fog doesn't come on a schedule. It's not tied to the full moon or the equinox or anything predictable like that. It just shows up, sometimes twice in 1 month, sometimes not for months at a time. But when it comes, it's always the same. Gray, thick, moving. There's a procedure for it now. Unofficial, of course. Nothing written in the manual. But everyone at the station knows what to do. When the fog appears, we get calls. Lots of them. People asking if it's safe to go outside, if they should lock their doors, if we know what's happening. We tell them to stay inside, close the curtains, don't look at it, definitely don't follow it. Then we get in our cars and we follow it. Not into the woods, we're not stupid, but we trail behind it, keeping our distance, watching. We're looking for people. Anyone walking toward it? Anyone stupid enough or curious enough to follow those shapes inside? Most of the time, the streets are empty. People here know better. They've heard the stories. But every now and then, there's someone new. A tourist, a drifter, someone passing through who doesn't know the rules. Last summer, we pulled a college kid out of the fog's path just in time. She was walking toward it, eyes wide, like she was in a trance. Joey had to physically grab her and drag her backward. She fought him at first, yelling that she needed to go, that someone was calling her. But once we got her in the car and drove away, she snapped out of it, started crying, said she didn't know what came over her. We drove her to the county line and told her not to come back. That's the thing about the fog. It calls to people. Not with sound. There's no voices, no music, nothing like that. It's more like a pull, a feeling that you need to follow it. That something important is waiting inside. I've felt it myself. That pull. It's strong. Makes your chest ache, like you're homesick for a place you've never been. I've learned to recognize it now. When it hits, I turn around, get in my car, drive the opposite direction. But not everyone's that strong, and not everyone knows what's happening until it's too late. There's a girl. I see her sometimes, walking the streets late at night. Long dark hair, pale skin, wearing a white dress that looks too thin for the weather. She never looks at me, just walks, slow and steady, always heading north, always toward the woods. First time I saw her, I thought she was a runaway. Pulled over, asked if she needed help. She didn't respond, didn't even look at me, just kept walking. I got out of the car, called after her. Nothing. I followed her for a block, trying to get her attention, but it was like I didn't exist. She walked right past stop signs, past houses, past the old church, heading toward Miller's Woods. I ran ahead, tried to block her path. She walked through me, not around me, through me. I felt it, cold, sharp, like stepping into a freezer. And for just a second, I wasn't on the street anymore. I was somewhere else, somewhere dark and quiet and wrong. Then I was back, standing on the sidewalk, watching her disappear around the corner. Joey told me later that people see her sometimes. A lot of the older folks remember her, or think they do. They say she's been walking toward the woods for 30 years. Some say longer, but no one knows who she is. No one knows her name. She's one of the shapes now, one of the things the fog left behind. There's a theory Joey has. He won't say it out loud, but I've heard him muttering about it when he thinks no one's listening. He thinks the fog isn't just taking people. He thinks it's collecting them, building something, an army maybe, or a family. He says the shapes inside the fog are everyone who ever followed it in, still walking, still searching, never finding. I don't know if he's right. I don't know if I want him to be right. What I do know is this: the fog will come back. Maybe tonight, maybe next week. And when it does, someone will follow it. Someone always does. And I'll add another name to the list, another photo to the box, another person the world will forget. I can't stop the fog. I can't save everyone who gets pulled in by it. But I can remember. I can write it down. I can make sure that somewhere someone knows they existed. So if you're reading this and you ever find yourself in this town when the fog rolls through, do me a favor. Stay inside, lock your doors, close your curtains, and whatever you do, don't follow it into Miller's Woods, because once you go in, you're not coming back. And even worse, no one will remember you were ever here at all. Rule 2. If dispatch calls you by your first name, hang up immediately. There are certain things you learn to recognize as a cop: the sound of a gun cocking, the smell of blood, the weight of a bad call before you even arrive. But nothing prepared me for the night dispatch called me David. It happened so fast I almost didn't catch it. The voice was familiar, sounded like Sarah, our usual night dispatcher. But Sarah never uses names. None of them do. By the time I realized what had happened, I was already halfway to the address they'd given me, an address that didn't exist on any map, an address where I found myself standing in front of a church, looking through the windows at my own casket. I'm still David, still a cop in this small town that doesn't make sense most of the time, still the rookie, even though I shouldn't be anymore. And I'm still learning rules I wish someone had written down before I had to learn them the hard way. This one should have been obvious. Joey told me on my first day. We were sitting in the break room, him with his frozen pizza, me with a notebook trying to look professional. He said it casual, like he was talking about where to get gas. If dispatch ever calls you by your first name, hang up. I wrote it down, underlined it, but I didn't really understand it. Not then. Why? I asked. Joey took a bite of pizza, chewed slowly. Because dispatch doesn't know your first name. They're not supposed to. It's protocol. Badge numbers only. Unit designations. Keeps things professional. Keeps things clean. But what if... No what ifs. He cut me off. You hear your name come through that radio, you end the call. Don't ask questions. Don't try to figure it out. Just hang up and drive back to the station. I nodded, added it to my mental list of strange town rules. Figured it was just another superstition, like the salt bags over doors or the red tape wrapped around light poles. I was wrong. It happened 3 weeks ago. I was on night patrol, driving the loop through town. It was late, past midnight, maybe closer to 1. Streets were empty, businesses dark, just me and the hum of the engine and the occasional burst of static from the radio. I'd been thinking about Miller's Woods, about the fog, about David Crane and all the people in that box of photos. My mind does that sometimes on quiet nights, wanders to the things I can't explain, the things that don't fit into normal police work. Then the radio crackled. "David, are you there?" I almost responded. The words were already forming in my mouth. "Yeah, this is Unit 4. But something stopped me. The name. She'd said my name. The voice sounded like Sarah, our night dispatcher. She's been working the desk for 10 years, knows the job inside and out. Professional, efficient, never makes mistakes. But she'd just called me David. I stared at the radio. My hand hovered over the transmit button. "David, we need you at 4487 Crossway Drive, possible 1054. Respond immediately." 1054. Possible dead body. My brain was trying to catch up. Sarah's voice, but using my name. Crossway Drive. I knew that street. Small residential area on the east side of town. But 4487. The numbers didn't go that high. Crossway Drive only had about 30 houses, addresses in the 200s and 300s. "David, do you copy?" I should have hung up. Should have remembered what Joey said. But instead, I picked up the radio. "This is Unit 4. Can you repeat that address?" Static. Long, heavy static. Then her voice again, but different, flatter. Wrong. 4487 Crossway Drive. You need to go now, David. They're waiting for you. My stomach dropped. They're waiting for you. Dispatch never says things like that. I put the car in gear, started driving toward Crossway Drive. Even as I did it, part of me was screaming to turn around, to call Joey, to do anything except go to that address. But I went anyway. Crossway Drive looked normal when I pulled onto it. Small houses with neat lawns, porch lights on, a dog barking somewhere in the distance. I drove slowly, watching the numbers. 287, 303, 315. Then the houses stopped. End of the street. A cul-de-sac with a dead tree in the center. No 4,487. I parked the car, left the engine running, got out. The air was cold. Too cold for this time of year. I could see my breath. The radio crackled again. You're here, David. Go inside. I spun around. There was nothing behind me, just empty road. But when I turned back, there was something that hadn't been there before. A church. Old. White paint peeling. Steeple crooked. It sat at the end of the cul-de-sac like it had always been there, like I'd just been too stupid to notice it. There was a number above the door. Brass. Tarnished. Every instinct I had told me to get back in the car, to leave, to call for backup, but my feet were already moving, carrying me toward the church, toward the front steps. The door was open, just a crack, warm light spilling out. I pushed it wider. Inside, the church was full. Pews packed with people, all of them dressed in black, all of them sitting perfectly still, facing forward, facing the altar. And on the altar, there was a casket. My heart was hammering. I took a step inside. The door swung shut behind me with a soft click. No one turned to look at me. No one moved at all. I recognized faces. Joey was there, sitting in the third row. My dad, in the back. Mrs. Kowalski from the grocery store. Chief Daniels. People from town. People I'd known my whole life. They were all staring at the casket. I walked down the center aisle. My boots made no sound on the carpet. It was like moving through water. Everything felt slow, heavy. When I reached the front, I looked into the casket. It was me. I was lying there, eyes closed, hands folded over my chest, wearing my uniform, badge polished, everything perfect. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't look away. Then the body opened its eyes. It looked right at me, and it smiled. You shouldn't have answered, it said. I stumbled backward, tripped, fell. When I hit the ground, everything changed. The church was empty. No people, no casket. Just rows of dusty pews and broken stained glass windows. Moonlight streaming through the holes in the roof. I scrambled to my feet, ran for the door, threw it open. I was back on Crossway Drive. My patrol car was still there, engine running, headlights cutting through the darkness. But the church was gone, just the dead tree and the empty cul-de-sac. I got in the car, hands shaking, radio silent. I drove back to the station, didn't stop, didn't look back. When I got there, Sarah was at the dispatch desk, drinking coffee, reading a magazine. "Hey, David," she said when I walked in. "Quiet night?" I froze. "What did you call me?" She looked up, confused. "What?" "You just called me David." "Yeah, that's your name, isn't it?" "You never use names. You're not supposed to." Sarah shook her head. "David, are you feeling okay? We've always used names here. It's a small department. We know everyone." I backed away from the desk, looked around the station. Everything looked normal. Same bulletin board, same coffee pot, same flickering fluorescent light in the corner. But something was wrong. Joey's desk was empty. His nameplate was gone. The photo he kept of his wife, not there. "Where's Joey?" I asked. Sarah's expression didn't change. "Who's Joey?" My chest tightened. "Joey, my partner. He's been here for 30 years. She tilted her head, looked at me like I was speaking another language. "David, you don't have a partner. You work alone. You always have." I ran, out of the station, to my car. I fumbled with my phone, pulled up my contacts. Joey's number was gone. I scrolled through, checked my call history, text messages, nothing, no trace of him. I drove to his house, knew the address by heart. 412 Maple Street. Small blue house with a boat in the driveway. When I got there, the house was yellow. The boat was gone. A different mailbox, a different name. I sat in my car outside that house for 2 hours, trying to make sense of it, trying to remember if I'd imagined Joey, if I'd imagined the last 5 years. But I hadn't. I knew I hadn't. Something had changed. When I answered that radio call, when I went to that address, when I saw myself in that casket, something had shifted. I went back to the station the next morning, checked the records, looked for any mention of Joey, any paper trail, anything, nothing. I pulled my own file, read through it. Everything was there. My hire date, my training records, my evaluations. But there was no mention of a partner, no mention of anyone named Joey. I asked around, carefully, tried to bring him up in conversation, described him, the mustache, the frozen pizza, the bad knee. No one knew who I was talking about. It's been 3 weeks now. I've stopped asking about Joey, stopped trying to convince people he existed, because I'm starting to realize something worse. Maybe it's not that Joey disappeared. Maybe it's that I'm in the wrong place, the wrong version of the town, the wrong version of reality. I've been paying attention, watching for differences, small things that don't quite match my memories. The post office has a blue door now. I remember it being red. There's a coffee shop on Main Street that I swear wasn't there before. Mrs. Kowalski doesn't recognize me at the grocery store anymore. She used to ask about my dad every time I came in. Now she just rings up my purchases like I'm a stranger. And the red house at the end of Barb Road. I drove past it last week. It's white now, just a normal house. Paint chipped, shutters hanging loose. No one talks about Bath anymore. No one remembers the stories. I checked the box of photos, the one I kept for the people who disappeared into Miller's Woods. It's gone. Not just the photos, the whole box, like it never existed. I'm starting to think I'm the one who disappeared. That night I answered the radio. That night I went to 4487 Crossway Drive. That night I saw myself in the casket. Maybe I didn't make it out. Maybe I'm still there, in that church, in that casket. And this, all of this, is just what comes after. The worst part is the radio. It still calls sometimes, always at night, always when I'm alone. "David, are you there?" I don't answer anymore. I've learned that much. But it keeps calling, and every time it does, I see something new that's wrong, something that's changed, something that proves I'm slipping further away from the world I used to know. Last night I looked in the mirror, just a quick glance while brushing my teeth, and for a second, just a split second, I didn't recognize the face looking back at me. It was me, but different, older, tired, like I'd lived years in the span of weeks. I touched my face, the reflection touched back, but the timing was off, just a fraction of a second delayed, and it was smiling, even though I wasn't. I've thought about leaving, just getting in my car and driving, going somewhere else, starting over, but But I don't think it would matter. I don't think I can leave, because I'm not sure I'm really anywhere at all. So I keep working, keep driving my patrol routes, keep pretending everything is normal. But I'm watching now, paying attention, waiting for the next thing to change. And I'm writing this down, all of it, because I need someone to know. I need proof that Joey existed, that the red house was red, that this town used to be different. I need proof that I existed before I answered that call. So if you're reading this, if you're the next rookie coming into this department, listen to me, learn from my mistake. If dispatch calls you by your first name, hang up immediately. Don't ask why. Don't try to figure it out. Don't think you can handle it. Just hang up. Because once you answer, once you go to that address, once you see what's waiting for you there, you can't come back. Not really. You'll be here, walking around, doing your job, living your life, but you won't be in the right place anymore. And piece by piece, everything you knew, everyone you loved, will slip away, until you're the only one who remembers how things used to be, until you're alone. The radio's crackling again. I can hear it from here, even though I'm not in my car, even though I'm sitting at my desk. David, are you there? I'm not going to answer, but I know it doesn't matter, because I answered once already, and that was enough. Rule 3. If you arrest the same person twice in one night, the second one is not human. You know that feeling when something's wrong, but you can't quite put your finger on it? That's what I felt when I arrested the same man twice in 3 hours. First time was easy. Robbery suspect, caught red-handed, standard procedure. But when I saw him again, in the same place, doing the same crime, it was like watching a recording play back. Same movements, same words, same everything. I thought maybe the first arrest had been a mistake, that I'd let the wrong guy go somehow. But when I brought the second one into the station, the first one was still there, sitting in his cell, staring at the wall. And when they finally saw each other, they didn't act surprised. They acted terrified, like they both knew something I didn't, like they both knew one of them wasn't supposed to exist. I'm David, still a cop in this town that keeps finding new ways to break me down. And after what happened last Tuesday, I'm not sure I understand what real even means anymore. The call came in at 11:34 p.m. Break-in at Morton's pawn shop on 5th Street. Silent alarm triggered. Suspect still on premises. I was 2 blocks away. Responded immediately. No backup needed. Morton's is small, one way in, one way out. Easy containment. When I pulled up, I could see the broken window. Glass scattered on the sidewalk, glinting under the streetlight. The front door was still locked, so whoever was inside had come through that window. I drew my weapon, approached carefully, looked through the broken glass. He was inside. Mid-20s, dark hair, thin build, wearing a black hoodie and jeans. He was bent over the display case, stuffing jewelry into a backpack. A crowbar lay on the floor next to him. "Police, don't move." He froze, looked up at me. His face was pale, eyes wide. There was a scar above his right eyebrow, old, faded. A tattoo peeked out from under his left sleeve, some kind of bird. "Hands where I can see them." He put his hands up slowly. Okay, man. I didn't turn around. Slowly. He did. I could see his whole face now, young, scared. The kind of scared that comes from knowing you're caught, knowing there's no way out. I cuffed him, read him his rights. He didn't resist, didn't say much of anything, just nodded when I asked if he understood. "What's your name?" "Marcus. Marcus Webb." I walked him to the patrol car, put him in the back. He sat quietly, head down, hands cuffed behind him. Normal arrest, routine, nothing unusual. At the station, I processed him. Fingerprints, photos, personal belongings logged. He had a wallet with a driver's license. Marcus Webb, 26 years old, address in the next county over. No priors, first offense. I put him in holding cell number 3. He sat down on the bench, still quiet, still looking at the floor. "Someone will be with you in the morning," I said. "Arraignments at 9. He nodded, didn't look up. I locked the cell door, heard the click, watched him for a moment. He didn't move, just sat there staring at his hands. Standard arrest, routine procedure, nothing strange. I went back out on patrol. The streets were quiet. Tuesday night in a small town. Most places were closed. A few bars still had lights on, but even those were winding down. I drove my usual route, down Main Street, past the post office, around the square. Everything normal, everything quiet. Then, at 1:15 a.m., my radio crackled. "Unit 4, we have another 1031 at Morton's pawn shop. Silent alarm, suspect on premises." I stared at the radio. "Repeat that." "Break-in at Morton's, 5th Street. Same location as earlier." I already cleared that scene, boarded up the window myself. Alarm just triggered again. Owner called it in, wants an officer on site. I turned the car around, headed back to 5th Street. Maybe it was a faulty alarm. Maybe the owner was paranoid. Maybe some kid had walked past and accidentally triggered the sensor. But when I pulled up, my stomach dropped. The window was broken. Again. Fresh glass on the sidewalk. The board I'd nailed over it was lying on the ground, torn off, and inside I could see someone moving. I got out of the car, drew my weapon, approached the window. He was there. Same position, same posture. Bent over the display case, stuffing jewelry into a backpack. Same black hoodie, same jeans, same crowbar on the floor. It was Marcus Webb. I froze. My brain tried to catch up with what I was seeing. I'd arrested him 3 hours ago. He was in a cell at the station, locked up. I'd watched the door close, heard the lock click. But here he was, doing it again. The same crime, the same movements. "Police, hands up." He looked up. Same face, same scar above the eyebrow, same wide, scared eyes. "Turn around, slowly." He did. And I saw the tattoo on his left arm, the bird. Same tattoo, same placement. It was him. It was absolutely him. "Marcus Webb?" I said. He blinked. "How do you know my name?" My heart was pounding. "Because I arrested you 3 hours ago." He shook his head. "No, you didn't. I've never been arrested." "Hands behind your back." I cuffed him, read him his rights again. He was saying something, protesting, claiming I had the wrong guy, but the voice was the same. Everything was the same. I walked him to the car, put him in the back. He looked confused, scared, exactly like the first Marcus Webb had looked. I got in the driver's seat, sat there for a moment, hands on the wheel, trying to make sense of it. Maybe they were twins. Maybe the first Marcus Webb had a brother. Identical twin. That would explain it. That would make sense. But the tattoo, the scar, those aren't genetic. Those are acquired. I drove back to the station. When I walked through the door with the second Marcus Webb, Sarah looked up from the dispatch desk. "Another arrest?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. My voice sounded distant, wrong. I walked him down the hallway, toward the holding cells, toward cell number 3. The first Marcus Webb was still there, sitting on the bench, staring at the wall. I stopped walking. The second Marcus Webb stopped beside me. The first Marcus Webb slowly turned his head, looked at us, and then he saw himself. His face went white, completely drained of color. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. The second Marcus Webb stared back. and I watched his expression change, from confusion to recognition to something else, something that looked like horror. They stared at each other for a long moment. Neither of them spoke. Neither of them moved. Then the first Marcus Webb stood up, walked to the bars, gripped them with both hands. "You're not me," he whispered. The second Marcus Webb shook his head. "No, you're not me. One of us isn't real." "I know." They said it at the same time, the exact same words, the exact same tone. I felt my skin crawl, a cold sensation running down my spine. "Which cell?" Sarah asked behind me. I couldn't speak, couldn't move. "David?" she said. I forced myself to respond. "Cell 4. I unlocked it, put the second Marcus Webb inside. He walked in slowly, never taking his eyes off the first Marcus Webb. I locked the door, stepped back. The two of them stood there, one on each side of the hallway, gripping their respective bars, staring at each other. "What's going on?" Sarah asked quietly. "I don't know." She looked at them, then back at me. "They're identical." "I know. How is that possible?" "I don't know." I went to my desk, pulled up the arrest records. The first Marcus Webb was logged at 11:47 p.m. Photo, fingerprints, everything documented. I processed the second Marcus Webb. Same procedure, photo, fingerprints. I ran both sets of prints through the system. They matched, both of them. Same person, same prints. The system recognized them as Marcus Webb, 26 years old, no priors. I stared at the screen. That wasn't possible. Fingerprints are unique. No two people have the same prints, not even identical twins. But the computer didn't care about what was possible. It just showed me what was there. Two identical people, same prints, same identity, same everything. I went back to the holding cells. Both Marcus Webbs were still standing at their bars, still staring at each other. "Which one of you is real?" I asked. They both answered at once. "I am." "You can't both be Marcus Webb." "But we are," the first one said. "We have the same memories," the second one added. "The same life, the same everything." "That's not possible." "We know," they said together. I felt sick. My hands were shaking. "One of you is lying," I said. The first Marcus Webb shook his head. "I'm not lying. I'm me. I grew up in Riverton. My mom's name is Linda. I have a scar from falling off my bike when I was 7. I got this tattoo when I was 19. I came here tonight to rob the pawn shop because I needed money. All of that is true." The second Marcus Webb nodded. "Same. All of it. Every detail. Because I'm Marcus Webb, not him." "Then who is he?" They both went quiet. Then the first Marcus Webb spoke. His voice was lower, shaking. "I don't know, but something's wrong with him. I can feel it." The second Marcus Webb laughed, a short, sharp sound. "No, something's wrong with you. You're the copy, the fake." "I'm not fake, I'm real. I'm the one who got arrested first. I was here first." "That doesn't mean anything." I backed away from the cells. "Both of you shut up." They did, but they kept staring at each other, and I could see it in their eyes. Fear, deep, primal fear. I went back to Sarah's desk. "Call Chief Daniels. Tell him we have a situation." "What kind of situation?" "I don't know. Just call him." She picked up the phone. I went to the break room, poured myself coffee. My hands were still shaking. The mug rattled against the counter. I needed to think, needed to figure this out. Twins didn't make sense. The fingerprints matched. Identical fingerprints. That was impossible. Clones? No. That was science fiction, not real. But I'd seen them, both of them. standing in the same place, doing the same crime, wearing the same clothes, like a loop, like a recording playing twice. I thought about the fog, about Miller's Woods, about the dispatch call that sent me to my own funeral. This town doesn't follow normal rules. I'd learned that by now. So maybe this was just another rule. Another thing that doesn't make sense. Another piece of this place that breaks reality. I went back to the holding cells. Both Marcus Webbs were sitting now, on their respective benches, heads down, not looking at each other anymore. I need one of you to tell me the truth, I said. Which one of you isn't human? They both looked up. Same expression, same confusion. What? The first one said. You heard me. One of you is something else. Something pretending. The second Marcus Webb stood up. I'm human. I'm real. I don't know what he is, but I'm human. The first one shouted. I'm me. I'm Marcus Webb. So am I. You can't be. I'm already here. Maybe you're the one who shouldn't be here. They were yelling now, both of them. The same voice, the same words echoing off the concrete walls. And then something happened. The lights flickered, just for a second. A brief flash of darkness. When they came back on, something was different. You're already splitting, David. You're already becoming more than one. Soon there will be two of you, then three, then more. And when there are enough of you, we'll come for the extras, the ones who don't fit, the ones who are redundant. I shoved the door open, fell backward into the parking lot. The thing stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the light, still wearing Marcus Webb's face. See you soon, David, it said. Or should I say, see you soon, David. It laughed. That layered, wrong laugh. Then it turned and walked back inside. I scrambled to my feet, got in my car, drove. I didn't stop until I was at the county line, parked on the side of the road. Engine running, hands gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles were white. My radio crackled. Unit 4, what's your location? I didn't answer. David, are you there? Sarah's voice. Calm now, normal, like nothing had happened. I picked up the radio. What's the situation at the station? Situation? Everything's fine. Why? The prisoner, Marcus Webb. What happened? Which one? My throat tightened. Both of them. David, there's only one Marcus Webb in holding. Cell 3. Been there all night. Quiet. No problems. What about Cell 4? Cell 4's empty. Always has been. I closed my eyes. Sarah, I brought in 2 suspects. 2 identical people. You saw them. Silence on the other end. Then, David, are you feeling okay? You only brought in 1 person tonight. Just Marcus Webb, around midnight. No, there were 2. I arrested him twice. I think you need to come back to the station. Maybe take the rest of the night off. I hung up, threw the radio on the passenger seat. I sat there for an hour, maybe more, watching the empty road, trying to understand. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Hello? David. My own voice, coming through the speaker. You need to come back. Who is this? You know who this is. I'm you, the real you, the one you left behind. I ended the call, but it rang again immediately. I answered. Stop. You can't run from yourself, David. We're everywhere now. All the versions, all the copies, and soon you'll have to choose which one gets to stay. Leave me alone. We can't, because we are you, and you are us. And when the splitting is done, only one will remain. The question is, which one? The call ended. I looked in the rearview mirror, checked my reflection. It looked normal, just me, tired, scared, but me. Then it blinked, and I hadn't blinked. It smiled, and I wasn't smiling. It mouthed words. See you soon. I punched the mirror, shattered it. Glass rained down onto my lap, but I could still see the reflection in the broken pieces. Dozens of them now, dozens of versions of my face, all looking at me, all smiling. And I knew with absolute certainty. The thing in the cell wasn't just talking about Marcus Webb, it was talking about me. I'm splitting, becoming multiple, and soon something will come to collect the extras, the ones who don't belong, the ones who aren't real. And I don't know which version I am anymore. So if you're reading this, if you ever arrest the same person twice in one night, don't bring them both in. Don't let them see each other. Don't put them in the same room, because one of them isn't human. And the moment they meet, the moment they look at each other and realize what's happening, it's already too late. The thing will know, it will understand, it will become real, and you'll never know which one was the original. I'm going back to the station now. I have to see Marcus Webb, have to know which one is still there, have to know if I'm still me, or if I'm already something else, something that's just pretending. Rule 4. If you see red tape on your own locker, don't open it. I know what red tape means in this town. I've wrapped it around crime scenes, abandoned buildings, places where people disappeared. It's a warning, a barrier, a sign that says, stay away. So when I walked into the station locker room this morning and saw a strip of red tape stretched across my own locker door, my blood went cold. I stood there for 5 minutes just staring at it. Someone had marked my locker, my space, me. I should have walked away, should have left it alone, but I needed to know. I peeled back the tape and opened the door. Inside was my uniform, hanging exactly where I'd left it, except it was covered in blood, fresh blood, still wet, and there were 3 bullet holes in the chest. I'm David, still a cop, still in this town that keeps showing me things I'm not ready to understand, and I'm starting to think I'm running out of chances to get things right. The red tape has always been our most important tool, more important than our guns, our badges, our radios. It's how we mark the boundaries between what's safe and what's not, between what's real and what's something else. I've used rolls of it, stretched it across doorways, wrapped it around light poles, marked cars, buildings, park benches, anywhere something happened that shouldn't have happened, anywhere the rules of this town broke down. And everyone respects it. Even kids know not to touch it. You see that red tape? You walk the other way. No questions, no exceptions. That's why seeing it on my locker felt like a punch to the gut. I came in for my shift at 6 a.m. The station was quiet, just me and the hum of the fluorescent lights in the hallway. Sarah wasn't at the dispatch desk yet. She doesn't come in until 7. I was alone. The locker room is in the basement. Old tile floors, rows of gray metal lockers, the smell of stale coffee and cleaning chemicals. I've been coming down here every day for 5 years. Same routine, same locker. Number 12. But this morning was different. The red tape was there, a single strip, stretched horizontally across the door, perfectly straight, deliberately placed. My hand froze on the stairway railing. I stood there, halfway down the steps, staring at it. Someone had marked my locker. My first thought was that it was a joke, some kind of prank, maybe one of the other officers trying to mess with me. But we don't joke about the red tape, ever. It's too important, too serious. I walked closer. The tape was fresh, no dust on it, no fading. It had been put there recently, maybe in the last few hours. I looked around the locker room. All the other lockers were clean, unmarked. Just mine had the tape. My heart was pounding. I reached out, touched the tape. It felt normal, just plastic. But seeing it there, on my locker, made my skin crawl. I should have walked away right then. Should have gone upstairs and asked Sarah to call someone. Should have followed the rule I'd followed for 5 years. When you see red tape, you stay back. But it was my locker. My things were inside. My backup uniform, my personal items, photos, my grandfather's pocket watch. I needed to know why someone had marked it. I grabbed the edge of the tape, peeled it back slowly. It came off with a soft, ripping sound. I held it in my hand, the red plastic curling slightly at the edges. Then I opened the locker. At first, everything looked normal. My uniform was hanging on the hook, just where I'd left it. My duty belt was coiled on the shelf. My boots were on the floor. Then I saw the blood. It was everywhere, soaked into the fabric of the uniform, dripping down from the shoulders, pooling on the bottom of the locker. Dark red, almost black in places, fresh enough that I could smell it, copper and salt and something else, something wrong. I stumbled backward, hit the bench behind me, sat down hard. The uniform was mine, same name tag, same badge number, but it was destroyed. 3 holes punched through the chest, bullet holes, clean entry wounds, the kind that come from close range. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. I just stared at it, hanging there, swaying slightly like someone had just taken it off. Then I noticed something else. There was writing on the inside of the locker door, in blood, smeared letters, messy but readable. "You're next." I slammed the locker shut. My hands were shaking. I backed away from it all the way to the stairs. Didn't turn my back on it. Didn't take my eyes off it. When I got upstairs, Sarah was at her desk. She looked up when I came through the door. "Morning, David. You okay? You look pale." I tried to speak. My mouth was dry. "There's something in my locker." She frowned. "What kind of something?" "Blood. My uniform. It's covered in blood." Sarah stood up. "What are you talking about?" "Someone put red tape on my locker, and inside..." I stopped, took a breath. "Inside, my uniform has bullet holes. There's blood everywhere." She stared at me. "David, are you feeling all right?" "I'm serious. Come look." She hesitated, then nodded. "Okay, show me." We went down to the locker room together. I led her to my locker, number 12. The red tape was still on the floor where I dropped it. I pointed. "There, look." Sarah walked over, opened the locker. Inside, everything was normal. My uniform hanging clean and pressed. No blood, no bullet holes, no message on the door. She turned to me. "David, there's nothing here." "No, that's not..." I pushed past her, looked inside. She was right. The uniform was clean, perfectly normal, like nothing had happened. "I saw it," I said. "I saw the blood, the holes, the message." Sarah put a hand on my shoulder. "Maybe you should go home. Get some rest. You've been working a lot of late shifts." "I'm not crazy." "I didn't say you were. But stress does things to people. Maybe you're seeing things that aren't there." I shook my head. The red tape was there. You can see it, on the floor. She looked down. The red tape I'd peeled off was lying right there. She picked it up. "This? David, this is just tape. Could have fallen off anything. It was on my locker." "Are you sure?" I wasn't anymore. Looking at her face, seeing the concern there, I started to doubt myself. Maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe the stress of everything, the fog, The dispatch call, Joey disappearing. Maybe it was getting to me. Yeah, I said finally. Maybe you're right. Maybe I need some rest. Sarah smiled, relieved. Take the day off. I'll let Chief Daniels know you're not feeling well. I nodded, grabbed my things from the locker. Everything felt normal, looked normal, but I couldn't shake the image of that blood-soaked uniform, the bullet holes, the message. I went home, tried to sleep, couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it. The blood, the holes, the words dripping down the inside of the door. You're next. 3 days passed. I stayed home, didn't answer calls, didn't check my messages, just sat in my house, trying to convince myself it hadn't been real. On the 4th day, I went back to work. The locker room was empty when I arrived. I walked slowly to my locker. Number 12. No red tape. Nothing unusual. I opened it. Everything was normal. Clean uniform. Boots. Belt. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Maybe Sarah was right. Maybe I had imagined it. Then I saw my reflection in the small mirror I kept stuck to the inside of the door. I was wearing my uniform, the one I'd put on this morning. Clean, pressed, perfect. But in the mirror it was covered in blood. 3 bullet holes in the chest, dark stains spreading across the fabric. I looked down at myself. My uniform was clean. I looked back at the mirror. Blood. I touched my chest, felt the fabric. Dry, normal. In the mirror, my reflection touched the same spot, and when it pulled its hand away, the fingers were covered in blood. I slammed the locker shut, backed away. My heart was racing. This time I didn't tell anyone, didn't ask for help, because I was starting to understand. The red tape had been a warning, not from someone else, from me, from some version of me that knew what was coming. I started paying attention after that, watching for signs, things that didn't match up. I noticed them everywhere. Sometimes when I looked in mirrors, my reflection was wrong, wearing different clothes, standing in different positions. Once I saw my reflection mouth words at me. I couldn't hear them, but I could read his lips. Run. Other times, I'd find things in my locker that I didn't remember putting there. A bloody handkerchief, a bullet casing. Once, a photograph of myself lying on the ground, eyes open, not breathing, and the red tape kept appearing. On my locker, on my patrol car, on the door to my house. I started removing it immediately. Didn't want anyone else to see. Didn't want them to think I was crazy. But it always came back. Last week I had a call. Domestic disturbance on the south side of town. I responded alone. It was a small house, lights on inside, shouting, the usual. I knocked on the door. A man answered. Tall, angry, drunk. What do you want? He slurred. Got a call about a disturbance. Mind if I come in? He stared at me. Then he laughed. You're the one. Excuse me? You're the cop. The one from the tape. My stomach dropped. What tape? He stepped aside, pointed into the house. On the living room wall, there was red tape, arranged in the shape of a person. Arms out, legs spread, like a crime scene outline. And in the center, someone had written a name. David. They said you'd come, the man said. They said you'd come, and it would happen here. Who said that? The ones in the mirror. The ones who look like you. I backed away. I'm leaving. You can't, he said. It already happened. You just don't know it yet. turned and ran, got in my car, drove back to the station. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. When I got there, I went straight to my locker. I needed to see it, needed to know. The red tape was there again, fresh, bright, unmistakable. This time I didn't remove it. I just stared at it. Then I heard footsteps behind me. I turned. It was me, standing at the bottom of the stairs, wearing the same uniform, same face, same everything, but covered in blood. 3 bullet holes in the chest. He looked at me, didn't smile, didn't speak, just looked. Then he walked forward, toward his locker, toward my locker. He reached out, grabbed the handle, opened it. Inside was another version of me, hanging by a rope from the coat hook, eyes bulging, face purple. The bloody me turned to look at me. You should have listened to the tape. Then he stepped into the locker and vanished. The hanged body was gone. The blood was gone. Everything was normal again. I stood there, frozen, staring at my empty locker. Then I understood. The red tape wasn't marking me. It was marking the moment, the point where everything splits, where I make the choice that determines which version of me survives. And I'd already made the wrong choice. When I opened the locker the first time, when I ignored the warning. Now I'm just living through the aftermath, watching it happen, frame by frame. I see myself die every day now, different ways, different versions, shot, hanged, drowned, burned. But I'm still here, still walking around, still going to work. I don't know which version is real anymore. The one who's dying or the one who's watching. Maybe both, maybe neither. All I know is that the red tape keeps appearing, and every time it does, I see another ending, another way this could go. This morning I found red tape on my front door, on my car, on the mirror in my bathroom. I'm surrounded by warnings now, marked from every angle. And the worst part? I know what it means. It means I'm running out of versions, running out of chances, running out of moments where I can still choose differently. Soon, there'll only be one version left, the one lying in the locker, the one with 3 bullets in his chest. And I'm starting to think that version has always been the real one, that everything else, all these other versions of me walking around trying to survive, were just echoes, ghosts, memories of a person who died the moment he opened that locker. I tried to warn myself. That's what the red tape was, my last attempt to stop it from happening. But I didn't listen, and now it's too late. So if you're reading this, if you're the next cop in this station, learn from me. If you ever see red tape on your own locker, don't open it. Don't even touch it. Just walk away. Quit your job. Leave town. Never come back. Because that tape isn't marking something dangerous inside the locker. It's marking you. And once you're marked, there's no unmarking yourself. I know. I tried everything, but every mirror, every reflection, every shadow, they all show the same thing now. Me, with 3 bullets in my chest. It's only a matter of time before reality catches up with what the tape already knows. I'm already dead. I just haven't stopped moving yet.